Hey, willkommen bei Life in Wonderland, einem Podcast über Bewusstsein und anderen Verrücktheiten. Ich bin Marije und in der heutigen Episode werden wir über was total Spannendes sprechen, und zwar über letzte Leben. Oh mein Gott, also dieses Thema ist so spannend und deswegen habe ich Marije eingeladen und sie ist Past Life Regressionist und ja, mit ihr werden wir ganz viel über letzte Leben sprechen oder auch über Zukunftsleben oder Parallelleben, über das Higher Self und ja, das alles auf Englisch. Das war meine erste Podcast-Episode / Interview ever auf Englisch und bin dadurch, finde ich, sehr stark gewachsen und für mich war das voll das krasse Ding. Also ja, bin ich jetzt total stolz und froh, jetzt diese coole Folge mit dir teilen zu können. Und ja, erstmal werden wir darüber sprechen, wie Marije überhaupt das Calling bekommen hat, Past Life Regressionist zu werden, um Rückführungen zu machen in letzte Leben. Und ja, was wir auch mit diesem Gefühl der, ja, wir sagen restlessness, wenn wir nicht wissen, okay, was ist unser Purpose und wie finden wir unser Seelenweg, was man da machen kann. Und darüber haben wir zum Beispiel gesprochen. Oder auch, wie eine 1:1 Session aussehen kann. Und ja, ganz viel zum Thema Seele, wie gesagt, Higher Self, Seelenstruktur und ja, warum auch Handwriting, also das Schreiben mit der Hand, so powerful ist. Denn wir lieben beide Journaling, also ich liebe ja Journaling auch für Schattenarbeit und so weiter. Und ja, diese Folge ist wirklich super, super spannend. Es hat mir auch total viel Spaß gemacht, natürlich mit Marije darüber zu quatschen und sie ganz viele Fragen zu fragen zum Thema Past Life und Beyond. Deswegen, ja, lehne ich einfach zurück und ich freue mich ganz doll, jetzt diese Podcast-Folge mit dir zu teilen. Viel Spaß beim Zuhören! Hey Marije, welcome to a Life in Wonderland podcast. Today is a super special episode and I'm really, really excited because it's the first episode in English of the history of a Life in Wonderland podcast. And I'm so happy to speak about one super interesting topic. It's about past life regression. And yeah, if there's just a past life, if we have like current and parallel lives and future lives and all this trippy stuff. So yeah, this will be so exciting, and I'm so happy to have a guest here, Marije, and I'm so happy that you pronounce your name right, because you're Dutch, I think, and yeah, maybe you can say something about yourself, who you are, and what you're doing.
Hi, yeah. So I am Marije, and I'm a past life regressionist, and I'm really happy to be here as well. I feel, especially in Europe, there's a lot of people that don't really know what past life regression means. So I'm always happy to, bring a little bit more clarity around the topic and explain what the work entails, because it's a fascinating realm.
Yeah. And how did you get to the special topic of past life regressions?
Yeah, past life regression started for me, I think now almost 5 years ago. I was, to be honest, not at all spiritual, but this all changed when I moved to Canada. And it's interesting because as soon as I moved to Canada, I had this really restless feeling that I was not learning something that I was supposed to learn, which is a very strange feeling. But every evening I would sit on the couch, I'm like, I'm missing something. There's something I'm not getting. And so I would start doing different courses. And at the time I was a graphic designer. So I was doing graphic design courses, but nothing was really fulfilling me. And then I was gifted the book Many Lives, Many Masters by Brian Weiss. Do you know this book?
Mm-mm.
Oh, it's a book of a guy who's a past life regressionist, but he used to be just a normal clinical psychologist. And in this book, he describes going from being a complete skeptic to being a complete believer of past life regression work, which was perfect for me at the time because I was a complete skeptic. But through this book, I was really like pulled in and I was super fascinated by it. And I read the whole thing within a couple days. But I was also really confused because I'm like, I don't know, like, is it real? Like, nobody's ever talked to me about this. It's like reincarnation. What the hell? But something happened that made me completely change. And this was the morning after I read the book. I wake up And right away, I'm thinking about past life regression, about reincarnation. And right away, also, I'm very puzzled. And then I heard a voice, and this voice told me, you know about reincarnation all along. It's just time for you to remember it now. And this completely floored me. Like, because I didn't only hear the voice, I also felt it in my body. It was really like a massive shock or a wave came through me. And honestly, from that point on, I was like, okay, this is real. And I need to know all that I can know about this. And not just about past life regression, but also about spirituality in general. Because I mean, there's a whole world out there that at that point I knew zero about. So from that point on, I started studying and reading and listening to different podcasts, meeting different people, going to mediums, meditating, you name it. And this feeling of restlessness, like that I was supposed to learn something, completely faded away. And I knew that was also an extra confirmation for me, that this was calling me in and this was the right thing to do. Yeah. And the interesting too, actually, I did my very first past life regression, underwent it myself shortly after, because I'm like, okay, I need to try this out. And in that regression, I saw a very spiritual life as a native Canadian living in that exact same area that I was living the years at that time. And the reason why that life was being shown to me was because it showed me that I had to be back in Canada for my spiritual path, to be opened again, to be reunited with it. So it was really neat because all these pieces of the puzzle kind of came together in that way.
Wow. It
Mhm.
sounds so nice. Yeah, so
It's a
guided.
crazy story, yeah?
Yeah. Can
Yeah.
we get into this feeling of restlessness again? Because I think it's really interesting, and I think a lot of people suffer from this
Yeah.
feeling that you don't know what to do, and then you're like,
Right.
yeah, you have so much media around you, and you're just looking through Instagram, and you have all the information, and you feel this need to, you don't know, and yeah. Tell a little
Yeah.
bit about this feeling and your whole situation around it.
Yeah, I totally know what you mean, because it's this really, because we're constantly evolved in this massive stream of information that comes to us. It's really hard to really stay clear on this path. And I was lucky enough that this book was gifted to me. I mean, I don't believe in coincidences, but I really connected with it. I think the path that is out there for you will be shown by your higher self. Your higher self kind of leaves you little breadcrumbs to follow. And you'll know it's a breadcrumb because it will feel really exciting. It will make you really curious, or it really pulls you in some way. And so when you feel a high level of excitement or joy about one of the things that is coming your way, that's basically a sign that your higher self is saying, hey, why don't you come this way?
Yeah, and that the higher self or some source will show it
Yeah.
to you, and it's not
Yeah.
like me finding some way, my soul path or anything. Yeah, but what can lead
Mhm.
us to, yeah, the soul path, that we find it like in a way that is shown to us, and not that
I
we
think
like feel the pressure, I have to find it. Just relax,
yes, yeah.
you go with the flow, and you just relax? Or what are some tips for be found?
Yeah, if you have this feeling, I mean, I didn't do this at the time, but if you have this feeling of restlessness or trying to find something, I think the very first thing to do is to set your intention and to ask your higher self or God or the universe, however, whatever source you want to connect to, ask, hey, I want to know my path. Can you show me the way? And from that point on, be completely open to whatever might come your way, because they can communicate in so many different ways. It could be a song that's playing on the radio. It could be you're overhearing somebody's conversation and it's really interesting, or whatever it is. Or maybe it is a book on Facebook that pops up and somebody's talking about. But you can always ask. Like you don't have to figure it out all on yourself, but then be open to receiving it.
Yeah, I think we have a lot of expectations through our soul path and our life, and what it has to look like, and which role we play in this life. And so yeah, I think there's a lot of expectation. I have to be in a certain way, and this has to fit to my job, for example, but
Yeah.
maybe it's completely something different. And that's, yeah, to be open and have no expectations about what's going with your life and how it's moving on.
Yeah, it's interesting because the life purpose question is the number one question that my clients come to me with. And a lot of people think that the life purpose is connected to some sort of job that they're supposed to be doing, or, a role that they have to fulfill. Very often the life purpose is to create self-love, or to be of service, or just helping people in everyday life while you're doing your accounting job, or whatever it might be. It's not to say that, oh, we're all having to quit our jobs and do now a spiritual purpose. Your life purpose can be having children. It could be whatever, really. It doesn't have to be over encompassing and take everything over.
Yeah, for me, it's joy. And I think in this moment, I received the answer of my soul path and what I have to do with my life. It was like just the word Freude, which is like in English joy. And I was like, huh, so easy? Could it be something like, build something or do this training, or you have to do whatever? And it was just like joy and share joy with others and feel joy. And it was like, actually, it's kind of relaxing to admit. And it was just completely something different than I was expecting. Yeah. And another interesting thing is that you talked about the voice. And in my awakening, I would say I also had like some kind of voice. And could you describe the voice? Was it like really you heard something, or was it like a thought? How was the situation?
Yeah, it was really profound, and it was really loud as well. And there was no way I was going to miss this voice, because usually, for instance, when I channel my spirit guides, or also when I have connection with my higher self, this could be quite subtle. But this voice that I heard from this time was really outside myself. And like I said, it wasn't just the auditory impact of it. It was also, I really felt it in my system. It was almost like I was hit by lightning or something.
Oh, wow.
It was really strong. And I really had to, because I was walking to the bathroom, it was morning, and I really had to sit down and like, whoa, what was this? It was a massive shock, but it also felt really good. It just felt like the truth. Like there was no doubt. There was no room for any doubt, really. But it was just what it is. And therefore I could also just accept it, even though it was such a big concept and it was so new to me. Because of this, it completely made it very easy for me to turn my life around 180 degrees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was your age when you had like your usually I wouldn't say spiritual awakening in German, but what's
Yeah.
similar, not like so much pressure on this word, because I think it's like, oh, enlightenment and blah, blah, blah. I don't believe in that kind of, because I don't think that we are like finishing something in this life and that we are like in a beginning of something. Could you tell a little bit more about your period of your life where you're exploring your spirituality?
Yeah, so this book was gifted to me, the Many Lives, Many Masters book was gifted to me when I was 30. And it really, for like who I was before I was 30 and who I was after I was 30, it's a completely different person. Like there's not much the same, because I started really seeing life from a different perspective, and I started reading all these new things, and I also started implementing all these things. And it's funny because my husband calls me, from before I was 30, his ex-wife. He's like, I don't know that version of you anymore, but I really like this version. So it was really profound changes, but I allowed it because I felt so good. Like all of a sudden I felt like, oh, I really don't have to judge other people. Everybody's just walking their path to learn their lessons. Who am I to judge? That's ridiculous. Like all these little things that throughout before I was 30 was completely normal to me, now started to shed away. And it was also impacted by, for instance, different foods that I ate, like different food groups completely fell away. And I started to feel so much more energy because of it as well. I think though, like, spiritual awakening or enlightenment, I think those are not things that you should strive for. I think it happens when it happens. But it can only happen when you're, I guess, ready, or when you're aligned or whatever. And it might be in this life, it might be in another life. It really doesn't matter. But I think it's, like you said,
Like, it's not an end. It's not like now you're awake.
it's not a means to
When
an
I
end.
read something, it's like, and some people, I had my awakening and I'm enlightened and blah blah blah. I'm like, oh, you're not. Don't, you're not. You're definitely not if you think that you are.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. I think so
This
too.
is like the spiritual ego thing, and I'm like, okay. I mean, we all have the spiritual ego, and it's like, I'm a little bit better because I'm a little bit more spiritual. I'm a little bit more working out, do more yoga and stuff like this, and I'm like, okay. Treat your ego, it's your best friend. Anyway, past life regression is such an interesting topic, and maybe you can tell us a little bit about the history, for example, and what is it actually, past life regression? The word regression, maybe you can translate it a little bit, or just talk about it.
So let me just explain to you what like a one-on-one session looks like, because that's really the core of my work. I also do group workshops for those that are just curious and want to try something. But the one-on-one regression is really, a deep dive into past lives, but also into a connection to your higher self. So a one-on-one regression, people come to me from all walks of life. And they don't necessarily have to have problems. They can, but they don't have to. A lot of people come simply because they're curious. And a past life regression takes, the technique that I use, it takes about 4 to 6 hours. So it's really a long session, even though it doesn't feel that way when you're in it. And you only need one. I mean, you can do a second one, but maybe you'll do that a couple of years later. And this time frame, you only really need one. And the first part of the session, I'm basically sitting down with my client and we're talking about their life right now. So I know what's going on and I know it's important to them. So I know what questions to ask when we go into the session. And when we go into the session, they are going to lie down on the bed that I have in my office. They're going to close their eyes and I will guide them by using hypnosis. I will guide them to re-experience a past life. They are the ones experiencing the past life, not me. I'm only asking open-ended questions. They can experience this visually, but they can also, I would say 50% of the people have a visual experience, 50% of the people have more a sense of knowing or feeling. For almost all of them, it's an emotional experience because you're being reunited with emotionally charged moments from a past life. Now, whatever life people are going to be shown, they're not just random lives, but the lives that they're going to be shown is whatever their higher self or their soul picks for them to see at this moment in time. And the reason for that is different for each person, but there's always some sort of information that helps them with their life right now. So there's some sort, it corresponds somehow with what's going on in their life right now. And your higher self always wants to motivate you to move forward and to accelerate in life. And so these lives that are often being shown in a past life regression have some sort of information that creates clarity, maybe because of a situation that they're in, or clarity over a relationship that they have. Maybe it provides guidance on a certain direction if they have a certain choice to make in life. But whatever they're going to be shown, corresponds directly with what's going on right now. So that already is very interesting because that's 2/3 of the session I'm in it, and I'm already seeing like, oh, I think it's trying to say this. In the last part of the session, we're connecting to the higher self directly. And I mean, we're not separate from our higher self. Our higher self is really a part that's always connected within us, but it tends to get overshadowed by everyday life, by worries, by to-do lists, whatever. When we do the technique that I use, we really get to focus in on the higher self and the connection will become very clear. So in this last part of the session, we can ask the higher self whatever questions that a client might have. Now, the first part of the questions will be questions that I have regarding the lives that were being shown. Like, hey, why was this life being shown? How do you want them to use this information? Was there someone in that life that they know from right now? all these kind of questions. But then the later half, we can ask the questions that the client has. And this is, for instance, when questions come like, what is my life purpose? Am I on the right path? Why did I choose to be born to my parents? Or why does my back keep hurting? Could really be about anything. And I record the whole session that they can then later listen to. Usually, though, when people are in a past life regression, they remember parts or sometimes the whole thing, sometimes not so much. But it's always really valuable to listen back to it when you're completely present, because there's so many layers of information that come out. Even if you listen to the recording, 6 months from now, you'll hear different things than you heard the first time. So yeah, it's really a very valuable session to have. The interesting thing is too, after the session is done, I ask my clients, "Oh, how long do you think you were laying there?" And then it's like, "Oh, I don't know, maybe 20 minutes. I don't know, maybe an hour." And usually it's around 2 to 3 hours. But it really shows that they're not completely registering consciously, time anymore. They're really in
Lost
another
in
spot.
space.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of what it is in a nutshell.
So you are communicating first with the higher self. Did I get it right?
That's the last part of the session.
Okay.
First we do the past lives. They will experience the past life, and I'm asking them where they are, what's going on, and at the end, I will ask them what their higher self is saying. So they are lending their voice to their own higher self.
Yeah. And the people who do one-on-one session, is there one topic? I go with like one topic and that's it, and you focus on one topic? Or is it like you go make a session and then you have like so much sessions, like topics? I mean, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. We do all the topics. There's no limited amount of topics. So this is why I asked them to bring a list of questions. I do say if you have more than 20 questions, maybe then prioritize the first 20. So I know 20 is doable. Sometimes people come with, 60 questions. I'm not sure we're going to get there because after a certain amount of time being in a hypnotic state, people slowly come out of it. So you cannot have them lay there for, 5 hours on end. So it depends. And sometimes also somebody's higher self is really talkative and they really want to speak. And sometimes a higher self only says 1 or 2 words as an answer, and then there's a minute of silence. So it really depends on the dynamic. But I always, I always tell my clients, come with all the themes. Think of everything you can think of. Anything that you're wondering about, anything that you're curious about. And this is also the reason why people only need one session.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, so powerful, especially with the one session thing. Can you describe a little bit the higher self? Is it like in German we say Ansprechpartnerin for us, like the first instance for us, and higher self for my multiple dimensional being, and when I have like different parallel lives, is it like the same higher self who's like zuständig, like for the whole Anne-Marie's in many dimensions, for example? Or do I have, as Anne-Marie I'm speaking now, have one higher self, and I'm the only one who has like this higher self?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Because when I started my, this spiritual quest and reading all these books, I noticed that you really kind of get spoon fed. So in the beginning, I did think this, like, oh yeah, I have my own soul, it's only mine. But then as you're going also through regression work, but also reading, for instance, more Dolores Cannon. Dolores Cannon is the lady who made the technique that I use. The more you read, the more you find out. So how Dolores Cannon describes it is basically your soul, just to start from a simple level, your soul consists of 2 parts. The part that's incarnated in your body, that might be the size of your pinky, and there's the part that's still on the other side. And the part on the other side remembers everything. It knows everything about your past lives, future lives. It knows what plan you made before coming into this life. And what happened when you incarnated is basically you can see your higher self as a massive diamond, and a little splinter of this diamond, let loose and was incarnated into Marije, into me. But it's really not to say that only one splinter goes, because your higher self, as you see it as a diamond, it consists of thousands of splinters. And so it can drop maybe another one a year later, or it could have just dropped another one 5 years before. So this is also what happens, for instance, when now people run into their twin flame. A twin flame means that you have the same higher self. It could also mean that you could also have somebody that lives a life on earth somewhere completely different, also with the same higher self. It's funny because when I was a kid, I always thought, oh, well, there must be a point where there's no more people being born because the souls would just run out. And now I'm like, nah, I don't really think that's the case. I think we have plenty of them. And you are connected to these parts, definitely. And I also think that these parts are influencing each other. So also perhaps even past lives, future lives, parallel lives. I think they're all maybe on a subtle level, but they're all influencing each other. So if you're making sure you're in a good spot and you're following your joy, your Freude, then you'll also bring this energy to all the other dimensions.
The higher self, is it infinite or kind of infinite? Like
No,
that?
it's infinite.
Infinite, yeah. And
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, in general, we're all one, kind of. Like,
Yeah.
not kind of, we're all one. And
Yeah.
I just try to get it, how the universe is structured, how
Right.
the beyondness of the universe and the infinite realm and the dimension are, how I can put it into my brain. And then
Yes.
I get to a point, it's like, yeah, it's infinite. I can't get it. My brain is not used to this kind of dimensions. And
your brain is also not made to get it.
Yeah.
You know, your mind is not made to comprehend it all. Your mind is made to focus in on the life that you're living now, so that you can learn through new experiences, because really that's what it wants. But your mind is not made to comprehend all these different levels, all these different dimensions, because it wouldn't be present anymore. It wouldn't be living its life anymore and learning its lessons through falling and standing. It's really interesting, because when you really think about also the very simple things in life that you just accept and not really comprehend, for instance, you're calling with someone in another country. If you're really thinking about that, how does that really work? Like, how can it be that I'm in Berlin, I'm calling my parents in the Netherlands over a phone, and I hear what they're saying, they hear what I'm saying? Like, if you really think about that, it's wild. Like, that's just insane. Or that an airplane can fly. That thing is like tons of kilos. There's a lot of people in that. They have two tiny little wings and it flies in the sky. Like, what are you talking about? Like, my brain cannot really picture that or really understand how that works, but you just accept it. And I think that's also with a lot of spiritual work. You kind of have to trust the feeling, your gut feeling. Accept whatever you want to accept. You don't have to accept what I believe in. Accept what's good for you at this moment in your life, and you're good. But I really don't think our minds are made to really understand it all.
Yeah, and to focus on your own being. And a few days ago, I had my feet or my legs in water in a pool, and I was like, this feels so interesting. It's like, so you have like your skin and it's covered with water, and the water is like, I think, some kind of trippy thoughts around this experience. And and I had one experience where I was like, an experience with LSD, for example, where you have like so many focuses kind of, and it's all mixed up. And I was like, okay, yeah, of course, we are not made for focusing on more than one being, because then you get crazy. And so interesting. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. So do we all have past lives, or is there someone who has like just this current life? And do we have like also like future lives and parallel lives? Let's talk about that.
Right. It's an interesting question. Obviously, I cannot speak for everyone. There are different answers to this question, but generally speaking, before you are born into a human life, you've had many other life forms before you get to a human life, because a human life is a very conscious life and you have just a wider range of understanding.
Kind of conscious.
Kind of conscious, yeah. But before you get to a human life, especially on Earth, because Earth is not an easy place to live, it's a very dense place with heavy energies. There's a lot of Earth is a place where you learn about emotions. A lot of other places don't have emotions. And because we learn to deal with emotions, we also have fear, which is something that a lot of other places don't have. And to deal with fear, you already really have to be of a certain level to be able to even handle that. Dolores Cannon says that when you start incarnating onto Earth, you start as like an elemental. So maybe, a rock, or maybe water, or maybe a plant, or anything like this. And then you go, to plant kingdom. Then you go to perhaps small animals or insects, animals, and then eventually to a human life.
With the soul, who's incarnated in myself, like the little thing of the diamond who was before in the mineral and then in the water, for example.
Same
Okay.
higher self. It could be a different splinter of your higher self, but all these splinters have connection to each other. So it's not to say that your actual splinter, and this is very precise, that I
very
also,
detailed.
maybe for some this is the case, right? That's really hard to point out. And future life and parallel lives, the interesting thing is that, and this is another one of those concepts that is really hard to grasp, on the other side, so when you go out of your physical body and go back to the other side where your higher self is, there's no such thing as time. There's no such thing as linear time like we know it. Like you're growing young, you're growing middle age, you're growing old. That doesn't exist on the other side. And I also have no clue how that works. I just accept it because I've seen this also in regressions, also with myself, that when you go to that place, everything is happening at the same time. Everything is influencing each other. What I've once heard is this theory that time on the other side is more like a cone, and that you can really tap into different spots in this cone, and that is forever expanding, which I like the thought of, but to really understand it, no idea. Definitely future lives. It's actually something we do also in my group regressions. We go to a past life and to a future life. And the reason why I do this future life is also to help people kind of understand the limitness of who they are, limitlessness of who they are, and of what the universe is like, and that it's so much more than what we perhaps expect or think that it could be, and that we can really tap into these things.
Even what is possible. What is possible for other people when you're like in a group session with other people and some are experiences this and that, and you're maybe comparing it to yourself, and first you don't have like a crazy experience, but this can just be the beginning, and it can grow, and this is like a seed, and I think there are so many types of seeds that are planting in your soul or in this incarnation or kind of in your brain, I don't know, and then it's flourishing, and the seeds are very important. And I think but one interesting thing is when someone is doing like a group session or even a one-on-one session and someone is not seeing anything, not feeling anything, is it even possible? Or what do you do with these people?
Yeah, that's a good question, because it doesn't happen often, and the interesting thing is too, this is also where the expectation comes into play again, because sometimes seeing nothing is exactly where they need to be, and all of a sudden they are saying like, oh, I see nothing. Oh, there's all these purple clouds around me. Oh, they're now green. Oh, there's lights in the distance. I'm like, oh, you're not seeing anything, but you're seeing this. And then it's like, oh, I feel really good. I'm like, and then as I'm really focusing in on all the different things they're seeing, all of a sudden they realize like, oh, actually this purple cloud is really giving me a feeling of whatever it might be, like love or healing or anything. It's really a part of the process where they just have to trust it. And it's funny because I have in the last 2 months, I think 3 people now that all went to a very abstract place in the beginning of their session. They first they went to these clouds of all these different colors, and initially they thought they were doing it wrong. And I'm like, no, keep going. Like, this is interesting. Let's find out what these clouds mean or why you are there. And all 3 said very similar things. And they said like, oh, I feel really good. I feel like I'm being recharged. And I just kind of want to stay here. I'm like, yeah, let's stay here, like soak it all up. And then I would ask at the end of the session, after that, they would go to maybe another life or another life. At the end of the session, I would ask their higher selves, and their answers were not the same, but similar. That the place where they went is an actual place on the other side where people get healing. So there are actual places on the other side when, as soon as your soul passes from this life, to go to. One of these places is a healing temple, and I've heard about this many times. Also, Dolores Cannon writes about it in her books. In these healing places, people are just there to be recharged with energy, to just bring the balance back, to just get more, healing or love or whatever it might be. And I asked their higher selves, like, hey, why did they have to go there? And they're like, well, they've had a tough period. We really wanted to give them some more love, some more energy. So it's really beautiful. But for a person that might be in the beginning, like, oh, I don't think I'm doing it right. Whereas I'm like, oh my God, this is so exciting. Like, they're doing something different than maybe the normal. But it also happens, not very often, but it also happens that people come for a past life regression and they don't see a past life. They go straight into the higher self. Or the other way around, where they see a lot of past life, but the higher self is not ready to talk. These things can happen. And there's always a good reason for it. But it's really dependent on the situation and the person. But therefore, I also tell people like, hey, just be open. It also can actually happen when they go back to a moment in their current life that has some sort of information for them. This is also not super uncommon for it to happen. So I always just trust that whatever's going to happen was exactly what's supposed to happen. And we're just along for the ride, basically. Yeah.
Do they also travel into a future life?
Yeah, that can happen. It's sometimes hard to distinguish if it is, because when there are more futuristic looking places, it's usually not on planet Earth.
Mhm.
So it's another planet in some other place, and you don't really know what it looks like now, or if it's future or past. So that's always a bit hard to see. But definitely, these scenes are also described. Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe it's not so useful for the moment, maybe. It can be, but I think a lot.
No, yeah, I mean, it depends. Like these future lives, also. I mean, the time frame that it happened doesn't really matter, to be
Mhm.
honest. What matters is that the lesson that they're holding for the person, or the meaning that is being shown by this life, how they can apply it. So it really doesn't matter in what time frame it is set. All that it matters is that they understand why the life is being shown. Because I've had
Mm.
people that come to me and said like, "Oh, I've done a past life regression." And then they see, I usually go to a couple different lives, but then the first life they see is the same that they saw before. And the reason why this is being shown again is because they didn't understand the lesson from the life. And that's the most vital part. It really, you need to understand why it's being shown. And then as soon as you know, never come back.
Mm. And I think you are like a helper for the messages, and this is like the good thing for the one-on-one session, that you can assist in helping them to understand what's the message.
Not so much me. I'm just asking a question. Yeah, no. I'm not giving the messages. I really want to leave my interpretations out of it. It's really whatever their higher self tells them. Because
Okay.
end of the session, they are channeling their higher self. I'm asking them their own questions, and
Mm.
it's their voice that's answering them. And I think that's so much more powerful to hear yourself answering it than me maybe saying it.
Mm.
So I always really stay out of it. I don't give my opinion. I don't give my my opinion. At the end of the session, sure, we reflect and then maybe we talk about things, but I want them to have their answers coming from themselves.
Yeah,
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah, and I think for the topic of expectations, the people who are a little bit concerned not to see something, or they have to get used to it, that they can also feel something and explore themselves in a different way. Like, we have so
Mhm.
many senses. It's not like that we just see something or smell something or anything. But yeah, you can discover, and when you're like in a state, you can experience the sensations and some some energies in a different way.
Yeah, actually, it's interesting because everybody can do this. And sure, they might see different things, but everybody can do it. It's also not very hard to do it. That's like the number one thing that I hear when people come out of the session. They're like, "Oh, I didn't even think I was that deep, or in the beginning, or oh, like it was quite easy to just go there. I didn't have to do much." So everybody can do it. All you need for a good session to be is, first of all, you need to want it. So it needs to be your own motivation, not your friend's motivation or somebody else's. And you need to be curious, because I think when you're curious, you're also naturally a little bit more open, and you just allow for whatever to happen. And really, expectations limit the possibilities of a session, because the possibilities are completely endless. But other than that, everybody can have a session, and I can guarantee that the session will be successful.
Yeah, and you don't need any skills, right?
Well, I mean, I followed a lot of courses to do this work.
No, no, no.
I
The
don't.
person who is like doing the session
Oh,
with
okay, okay.
you is
Yeah,
not
yeah,
like, I don't have to be a psychic and no, I
No,
think
no, you
random
don't need.
people can do like a past life regression. There's nothing on it. Let's
I
do
mean,
it.
that would be wonderful. It would be wonderful. Maybe in like 20 years from now, it's
It
so
would be
normal
great.
for people to just do this. No, you don't need to have any skills. You don't even have to believe in past lives. You don't need to be a meditator, nothing like this. And this is also what I find really exciting, because of this, I get so many different kinds of clients from different walks of life with completely different stories. And yeah, everybody can have a successful session. That's not that hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So cool. Past life regression people. Yeah. And how can we integrate the experiences of the session, for example, or the group session? And yeah, maybe you can get a little bit into the experiences you can expect. I mean, there's no expectation, I think, and it's very hard to tell, yeah, this and that is happening, because it's very individual. But how can we treat these experiences in our life?
Yeah, to what could happen in a regression is really limitless. Like, and that's also the thing that I really like about doing this kind of work. Every session is so different, even if it's with the same person. Like, for instance, my husband obviously has been a guinea pig for many times, and he's had so many different experiences going through this. So it's really hard to say, oh, this is what's going to happen, or this is what's going to happen. But I do tell people, like, hey, have no expectation. Don't think you're only going to be perhaps in a human life. It could be a different life form. Could also be a non-physical life. There's a lot of times when people go back to being an energy or some sort of gas in the universe. It could be, like I said, it could be their current life. It could be really so many different things. So I always tell people, be completely open, be kind of like, yeah, a blank slate, so to speak. And to answer your question about how to integrate the work, this is a really good question, because this is always what I ask the higher self at the end of the session. I'm like, okay, so what do you want them now to do? How do you want them to integrate this work? Something that I started seeing lately is that the higher self says, keep this experience to yourself, or at least for the next couple days. Start sharing it after that, because what happens after a past life regression is, you open the door to this other realm, you open the door to your higher self. Just because you're out of the session doesn't mean that now this door is closed. So it's very likely that after a session, that more information keeps coming your way, and this could come your way in perhaps an epiphany or a thought or an idea, or just really in a dream. It's also often the case. So I think as soon as you start sharing it with people, you almost have to make it in like bite-sized chunks, and there has to be a conclusion to it. Whereas if you just leave it open for a little while, there's more possibilities, and you can also understand it at different levels. Personally, what I always like to do is I always write it out, because for me, writing really helps me to kind of integrate it and to get more of an understanding about it. But yeah, it's different for each person. The number one thing is what the higher self says, is to listen to the recording. That's really important, because then they're, with their conscious mind, listening to what their voice was saying, that really helps them to accept it and to also start working with it. So the recording is really a vital part in that.
Yeah, also for me, writing is such a powerful tool, because then I also can connect to some instant of my, something in myself and out of my space. I don't know, but they can help me to go through shadow work and get the point and a solution for the problem, for the struggles, and I get into the thing, how I feel, what are my thoughts on a specific topic, and really write it out, journaling. I think I made so much shadow work through journaling, because and then I cried, and then my hand is like writing something, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so crazy, because I feel like there's like something helping me to learn something about myself. So
100%. Another thing that I like about writing is that what I heard once is, when you write with the hand and not typing, it's also because your arm is connected to your heart chakra. And so when you're writing, you're writing from the heart, and the heart is where the connection is to the other realms. I had a very interesting...
always do like the journaling with my hand, because when I type something with my with my laptop, it's not powerful at all.
Yeah, I agree. I had a really interesting session this week, and it was a higher self that was really wise. Like, it's interesting, you can have different levels somehow of higher selves. So if you have a higher self that's maybe of a little bit more, a lower level is not really the right word, but let's say a lower level. They will, younger level perhaps. They can really help with questions about that person's life, or about everyday life, or what practices they should do, or their diet, or whatever. But sometimes you have one that's really high, and the really high ones talk more about, what's going on in the world, or how the mechanism of the ego works, or anything like this. And so this week I had a really higher self. Wasn't too interested in the small stuff of my client's life, but it was really interested in the bigger picture. And it said that that she was using her mind in the wrong way, that the mind is purely only there to form thoughts, but the mind is not to be relied on to make decisions. That's not what the mind is made for. It's not made to make decisions. And then they said the heart is made to make decisions. This is the place where you need to look for guidance. The mind is only there to help create thoughts, and that's it. And then it kind of went into, in the time that we were living, that people have this mixed up. And this is also why there's so many things that are not really flowing freely. Energy is not flowing freely, because we're too much in here and not listening to the guidance of our heart.
It's like a symbol from, I feel nearly everything in this world is like mixed up. Like, the good thing is actually bad, and the bad thing is actually good, and the media and blah blah, and the school system, and but this makes totally sense with the mind and the heart thing. And for me, during these days, and I get to learn how to make decisions with my intuition more. Like, I don't know if there's like an difference between heart decision and intuition decisions. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I think your intuition speaks through your heart. I think your intuition or your higher self, it's the same thing. It speaks through your body. And so your body will tell you. The thing is, though, that if you are over consuming information, over consuming TV or movies or social media, or even your friends' stories, there won't be enough space for your consciousness to pick up your inspiration, your intuition, you'll be too busy, you'll be too distracted. So this is something that I think is really important for us to realize, like, hey, we also need quiet space, and we also need to do nothing. You don't even meditating, just do nothing, just sit on your couch and look outside, or look at the plant or at your cat, and just do nothing for a little while. And this is really when slowly things will come more into balance, and it will open up your antennas again.
Yeah, so interesting. Yeah, and I think this is like a lesson for myself right now. I can't get any further with my mind and my brain, and there's like a limit reached now, and I can't decide anymore with my brain, and it's like so hard for me to make a decision with my mind. I don't get further when I try to get to make a decision with my mind.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm doing the surrender experiment by Michael Singer right now, and he basically explains that the universe or God's plan for you is so much bigger than your mind can really think of, that all you have to do in your life is to just, step back and allow life to flow through you, and it will take you to places that you didn't even knew were possible, that you didn't even knew that was perhaps an option for you. So I think the less we intervene, and the more we surrender, and the more we step back, the more magical our path would be. And this book that I mentioned, The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer, it's basically him describing his life by example on how he did this and where it led him. And it's amazing. It's really, really exciting.
Yeah, I think always when we remember these decisions maybe that came into our life, or like coincidences and brought us into some kind of magic, and we always try to use our brain, to use our mind, and want to be in control of our life, and then some things are like getting into struggles. And I'm reading a book that's about authenticity and how the universe is working through you, and that you actually can do nothing. You can just follow your feelings, actually. What is authentic for yourself, it's coming to your life, and it will get through you. And because of the mind, we mix things up, and we have expectation how we want to live, or where we want to go, and this stuff. And yeah, and I think it's not working anymore. We're like going into a time where these thoughts are fading away. We noticing they're not working anymore, and we have to change the pattern. We're making decisions, how we live, how we spend our life.
Yeah, and another thing that's also going on is that the consciousness of humans and the consciousness of Earth is rising. So we are becoming more conscious, and we are growing. And this is interesting because this is also something that you see in Past Life Regressions. When Dolores Cannon started doing her Past Life Regressions in the early 60s, people would go into a regression, come out of it, and don't remember a thing. Now that's highly uncommon. Now when people have a regression, they are aware still where they are, or who they are, or that I'm sitting next to them. They can even filter what they're saying. They're really being in two places at the same time, but it's also because their consciousness allows for, these different experiences to happen, and also easier for them to tap into it.
Yeah, I think this will be just an amazing time, the next years, and this decade of celebrating our spirituality, our oneness, and just to see how many people get into the spirituality, and the goddess and gods of themselves, and experiencing like a new version of themselves every now and again, and like evolving in this human experience. It's like super, super crazy. And to discover past lives and different lives, I think it's just a trippy thing to do, and a fun one. And you can learn a lot, and super interesting to do a past life regression. And another interesting question is the 3 most important insights from your current life, your experiences and all the stuff that were like super, wow, this is like my mantra or something like this?
Yeah, the first one would definitely be trusting the universe.
Mm.
And this is a theme that I set for myself 2 years ago at like a New Year's Eve. I'm like, okay, this is going to be my theme for the next year. And honestly, it's been my theme for all these years, because every time I would walk into some situation that would cause me frustration, or I want to know the outcome of something, I would just tell myself, you know what, I'm just going to trust the universe, because I know the universe has my back. It's going to be fine. And it always has a plan that's way better than my mind can imagine. So trusting the universe is really a big mantra of mine. Another one is what is really important to me, and also in the work that I do, is to have an open heart. To always have an open heart, not to close your heart, not to shield your heart, because I think we close our hearts to make ourselves safe, but yet you're really doing the opposite. I think by always having an open heart, you're allowing for real connection to other people. You're allowing for real love to be experienced by another, but also by yourself. So open heart is a really big one. And one that had really influenced me is, we already touched on it, but is to really allow other people to walk their path. Like before I was 30, I would always be judgmental, or always have an opinion about what somebody else was doing, or I gave them advice on how they should do this or that, because I mean, my ego was a bit inflated at the time. And now I just realized, no, everybody has the right to walk their own path, make their own choices, even if it might lead to mistakes, whatever. They're doing it to learn things. So those are really, some big insights that I live by.
Yeah, and I think we get so many insights that are kind of basic and we know them, but when you get them, then you're kind of experiencing them in a different way, and you feel them that they're like the truth, and and we don't know the truth for other people, and that is like also we get to know us better, and the other stuff, it's not our business, but sometimes it's hard and we're on the way and we not have to be perfect and this stuff like this. So the human experience, it's crazy. Thank you, Marije, for such a passion for this topic. And now you can say something to the audience here, so to the people who listen to us right now. What are your last words here in this podcast today?
My closing words.
Closing words sound so much better than last words. It's like
right. Last words are so definitive. Yeah, I think. I get a lot of clients that are wondering if it's right for them or if they should do a past life regression, and I always tell them to follow their gut feelings. I mean, you have gut feelings. This is your higher self, or it's your spirit guides, or something else, but you have them, and please listen to your own gut feelings. Never listen to anybody else's gut feelings, but really get in touch with your own guidance, trust your own guidance, and also act on it. And if you do this, life will be really wonderful.
Thank you so much, Marije.
Thank you.
Yes, das war das Interview mit der lieben Marije. Also erstmal vielen, vielen Dank noch an dich. Es hat mir wirklich so großen Spaß gemacht und freue mich einfach schon auf alles in meinem Leben, was mit Past Lives zu tun hat und anderen Leben. Und ihr wisst ja, wir sind multidimensional Beings, und ich finde das so spannend, da reinzutauchen und auch verschiedene Anteile von mir kennenzulernen, aber auch verschiedene Leben. Und dazu werde ich vielleicht auch nochmal in anderen Podcast-Folgen was sagen, weil das kam irgendwie in meiner Bewusstseinsreise relativ früh, dass ich Bilder empfangen habe, die auch mit anderen Leben verknüpft waren. Das ist einfach total spannend. Und ansonsten hoffe ich natürlich, dass du sehr, sehr viel davon mitnehmen konntest, und schau gerne auch nochmal die Links in den Shownotes an, weil vielleicht bist du ja so ein bisschen neugierig geworden, wahrscheinlich, und möchtest vielleicht ein Buch lesen, die habe ich verlinkt, oder selbst einfach mal einen Gruppenworkshop machen oder mehr dich mit dem Thema beschäftigen. und dadurch mehr und mehr ein Stück von dir selbst heilen, ein bisschen mehr ganz werden. Und ja, es ist einfach auch eine trippy Sache, wo man einfach sich denkt, geil, interesting, und ich will darüber mehr erfahren, ich will mehr über mich erfahren, wer war ich. Und ich hatte auch mit meiner Therapeutin, die schamanisch arbeitet, haben wir auch schon so verschiedene Rückführungen gemacht. Und ja, das ist einfach total spannend, wie wir, wenn wir einen Anteil heilen, unser Jetzt und andere Anteile natürlich auch mitheilen. Und frage mich auch immer, wie ist das? Wie ist das Universum aufgebaut? Wie ist das mit dieser ganzen Seelenstruktur? Ja, gibt es da irgendwelche Regeln? Inwieweit verbindet sich das alles miteinander oder beeinflusst sich untereinander? Und da einfach reinzudiven in das Thema, quasi in mich einzudiven, das ist wirklich eins meiner allerliebsten Hobbys, und für mich ist das Brain Stretching pur. Und ja, also ich hoffe, wir haben dir quasi damit eine neue Dimension in ein neues Feld geöffnet, falls du dich noch nicht damit beschäftigt hast. Ansonsten einfach dich inspiriert zu haben. Ansonsten hoffe ich einfach, dass wir dich inspiriert haben mit dieser Folge, ja, selbst noch mal ein bisschen nachzuforschen und ja, dass es einfach wieder mehr in deinem Feld ist, das Thema. Also in meinem Feld ist es auf jeden Fall sehr jetzt ja, reingekommen, und deswegen bin ich total neugierig, da noch mehr darüber zu erfahren. Und ja, lass uns da einfach zusammen ein bisschen neugierig unser Selbst erforschen. Und ansonsten freue ich mich natürlich, wenn dir die Folge gefallen hat oder wenn du den Podcast magst. Da würde ich mich einfach mega über deinen Support freuen. In den Shownotes findest du auch einen Link zu iTunes bzw. Apple Podcasts. Und ja, das würde mir die Welt bedeuten, wenn du den Podcast mit 5 Sternen bewerten würdest, wenn er dir gefällt, und vielleicht hast du auch Bock, einen kleinen Kommentar zu schreiben. Das hilft mir unendlich, ja, einfach das hier weiterzumachen und dass es einfach mehr Leute erreicht mit meiner Botschaft und ja, mehr Leute für das Thema Brain Stretching, Bewusstseinserweiterung und sich selbst zu begeistern. Und ansonsten schau gerne auf Instagram vorbei, und da würde ich mich natürlich auch freuen. Also in egal welcher Form würde ich mich einfach super freuen, wenn wir uns zusammen connecten. Und natürlich auch schön, dass du hier den Podcast hörst. Genau, das war's jetzt von mir. Ich wünsche euch noch einen wundervollen Tag, wo auch immer ihr seid. Love and Light, Anne-Marie.